Hello and welcome to Love Thy Lawyer, where we talk to real lawyers about their lives in and out of the practice of law, how they got to be lawyers, and what their experience has been. I'm Goodman, the host of the show, and yes, I'm a lawyer. Nobody's perfect. Extensive experience as both a civil and criminal litigator. He's served as a public defender handling numerous felony and misdemeanor matters. He has been part of civil litigation teams supporting mass tort and class action cases. He has coached high school debate teams. He currently is a senior associate litigating criminal matters throughout the Bay Area. Joe McPeak, welcome to Love Thy Lawyer.
Hi, Lou. How you doing? Thanks a lot for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. Where's your office right now?
Well, our main office, what I often call our HQ, is in downtown Hayward, right in the heart of downtown Hayward, actually, on a block of Main Street between A Street and B. It's a great location, very central, which helps us because not only are we very active in Alameda, we're active all throughout the Bay. So having that central location is really helpful. And it also helps that I personally happen to live just about 5 or 10 minutes away in Castro Valley, which makes my work-life balance it's excellent, actually, for my purposes. And but we also have offices in Walnut Creek, in Manteca, in San Jose, and in Oakland as well.
How many people are in your firm?
Well, of the attorneys, there's myself. Like you said earlier, I'm the senior associate. I mostly focus on our felonies and, many of our misdemeanors. We also have Daniel, of course, Dan Baswani. He's our lead attorney and the principal of the firm. And we also have Simone Chambliss, who's our newest associate who joined us a couple months ago. Most recently, she worked for a civil firm, but before that, she worked in the Santa Clara DA's office. And I like to say that we stole her because she used to work for the other side. Now she works for us. And every single one of us tries our best to be an asset to our clients.
So where are you from originally?
I'm originally from Philadelphia. I was born there. That's where I went to high school, college, and law school. For undergrad, I went to St. Joe's University, where I got my bachelor's in history. And then took a year off so I could maybe just think for sure whether I wanted to go to law school, maybe get a better LSAT score, that kind of thing. I made the commitment. I ended up going to Drexel for law school and took a chance on that because they were a very new law school at the time. But fortunately, the university they're affiliated with is very respectable. And it turned out great. And so that's where I went to law school. And that's also where I started practicing law as well immediately after graduation.
Well, let's start with high school. How was that experience for you?
I went to high school at LaSalle College High School, which is just barely outside of Philadelphia. It was a Catholic prep school. That's where I started joining the debate team over there, and that's probably sort of the most reasonable bridge to eventually becoming a lawyer, I suppose. I had a lot of fun doing that. Of course, as you mentioned earlier, I went back there to coach, and I'm still in touch with some of my students who I coached to this day.
So you debated for the school, and then later on, when you were practicing attorney, you came back and coached that same debate team?
Correct. Yeah, I went back to LaSalle to coach their debate team while I was working as a public defender in Philadelphia.
Now, when you got out of high school, you went to St. Joseph's University. How was that experience? Anything interesting in terms of extracurriculars there?
Well, I did not continue debating while I was at St. Joe's. College forensics was not something that attracted me at that time, but I was pretty involved in the college radio station there, and had a lot of fun putting together shows with a friend of mine who I'm now in touch with again because he happened to move out to California as well, albeit Southern California. So I was able to put a radio show together with a friend of mine who was also named Joe, actually, and we made that work into our show theme because we were able to come up with a great name. We called it the Joe and Joe Heavy Metal Show. And so we had a lot of fun with that.
Maybe you guys should start a podcast.
We have thought about the idea before. He is already actively podcasting himself as a freelance music critic and music writer. And I'm quite jealous of some of the press credentials that he gets to some of the shows that he's able to go to.
Well, since you brought it up, what sort of music do you like?
I mean, most of what I listen to is heavy metal. I mean, I've seen Iron Maiden 5 times, including most recently at the Oracle. I don't know if it's still called the Oracle anymore, but we have an idea what we have an idea of what I'm talking about. I have tickets to see Exodus, Testament, and Death Angel around Thanksgiving week. So, yeah, that's pretty much mostly what I'm into. And it's kind of cool living now in the Bay, where so much of that scene, at least from America's standpoint, was developing. Of course, Metallica is from the Bay Area. Slayer is from LA, but still, very intimately connected with California.
When you graduated from college, did you go directly to law school or did you take a little time off?
No, I took a little time off. I was able to take a step back to breathe. I took a full-time job at the federal courthouse in the clerk's office there in Philadelphia and think about do I really want to go to law school? Is this what I want to do? I wasn't sure what type of law I wanted to practice at that time, but I was pretty confident that I did want to go to law school and become a lawyer.
When did you first start thinking about becoming a lawyer? Did it go back to the debate in high school?
Yeah, I think that definitely when you're a debater, it's just kind of that thing that's imbued into your head, lawyers, just duh, that's the thing that's got to be part of your conversation. Because once I started going to law school, I started to really, really love the subject matter, especially once I started taking criminal law and criminal procedure. I was like, that's what I want to do. This is what I want to do. This is what I like to talk about. This is what I want to do. I want all my internships to be in this field, and hopefully my jobs will be in this field too.
And that was at Drexel University?
Correct.
Now, when you got out of Drexel, where did you go to work initially?
I started volunteering for one of the judges in the Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas, which is, you could say, it's the equivalent of the Superior Court here in California. But that only lasted for about a week, because fortunately the Public Defender's Office gave me a call. They liked my application and they decided to give me an interview. And from there, I was able to build off of what I had just done on my 3L year, because my 3L year, I got to do what's called a criminal litigation field clinic, and basically, work at the public defender's office for course credit and even handle cases in court as long as our supervisor was there. And I had a lot of fun with that. I was able to basically check off all my boxes. I did a full misdemeanor trial, got a not guilty. I was able to do a motion to suppress, got it granted, and also, negotiate a case down for one of my clients. So it was a wonderful experience all around, and it was a perfect springboard to eventually working in the public defender's office in Philly.
How long were you in the Philadelphia Public Defender's Office?
Just under 4 years, and that's where I ended up getting most of my jury trial experience at that point.
So what led you to come to Alameda County and be practicing out of a law firm in Hayward?
Well, my wife, Lisa, she is very smart, very great, and was fortunate enough to get herself a very promising job opportunity as an electrical engineer at a major company here in the Bay Area. So when she said, "Hey, we can do this when we move to California," I was like, well, if I got if I got a clerkship to the Third Circuit or something, she wouldn't have gotten it my way. So I said, you know what? Yeah, you got the opportunity for Tesla. We can't avoid that. So let's go. And now I'm out here.
So what do you think of practicing in California and living in California versus being on the East Coast?
Well, the weather's certainly better, I'll say that.
Yeah.
Fires aside. Yeah, a lot of people throughout the rest of the country, I think, don't realize that, those mid-Atlantic states, whether it be New York, Philly, or Baltimore, people always see the reports of, the really bad snow during the winter, and they just assume that it's cold there all the time. And it's man, you have no idea how bad those summers are. I definitely noticed that in general, things feel a lot slower and more deliberate when it comes to the cases that I have, which I don't mind. It's nice to have some time to breathe every once in a while.
What do you really like about practicing law?
I think what I like is, I think to me, criminal cases are the most important and most perfect expression of why we have courts and why we have a justice system.
If someone were just coming out of college, would you recommend to a young person to go into law as a career?
I would, as long as they feel like they have a passion for the subject matter. And I think that's really the crucial thing. As you mentioned earlier, I have worked in the civil field for a brief period of time. And I was very lucky to have the opportunity in that field. But the reality is that I realized after a time that it just was not the type of thing that really motivated me. It was not the type of work that I really loved. And then when I came back to work for Red Metric, when Daniel gave me that opportunity, I started noticing as I'm doing things like writing letters to clients even, or typing up subpoenas, I thought, wow, this is like the most mundane part of my job, and yet I actually really love it. And I think that was really the sign that, yes, I found something that I need to stick with. Don't listen to the haters who are going to say, oh, like there's way too many lawyers out there who are like, oh, I wish I never came to this profession. Like, oh, your son's becoming a lawyer. Like, why didn't you warn him? And it's like, dude, like, shut the hell up. Like, it's if they want to do it, then that's the path of their happiness, and you should let it be. And for me, I decided that criminal law was, something that I really like to get up in the morning and work on. And, don't listen to the haters. If that's what you want to do, just go for it. Find yourself gigs in that field, be it unpaid internships. You might have to start there, or maybe if you can find a job that's adjacent to that and then work your way into actually practicing law there, just keep following it. Because if you like that subject matter, you will notice the rewards coming in.
How is actually practicing law met or different from your expectations about it?
I guess that before I went to law school, I think I always expected to be in court almost nonstop. But now that I'm practicing criminal defense, I am in fact in court nonstop. So I guess that expectation wasn't really challenged. I suppose that I definitely expected there to be a lot more contested evidentiary hearings on the regular, like almost all the time before I started practicing law. And then when I started practicing in Philly, that was, my expectation was fairly close to reality. Now, in California, it seems like they're a little bit separated, but that doesn't mean that you can't make things work for your client. You just got to do it in a different way. So I would say that is probably the thing that's most different in terms of expectation versus reality of practicing law.
What about the business of practicing law? How's that gone for you? How do you fit into the business of Red Metric? And how is that either met or different from your expectations about being a lawyer and being a business person? Because very frankly, if you're in a private practice of law, you're in business.
Yeah, so that was definitely something that requires that a lot of adjustment on my part. Because being a public defender for a while, it's like you don't have to worry about that. And even in my civil gig, I had no input on client intake or getting clients to sign up or anything like that. Daniel has done a really good job at noticing what all of our strengths and weaknesses are and finding a way to make sure that clients and potential clients want to interact with us, want to seek us out. And we also benefit from our wonderful support staff as well. And we like to think that our clients and potential clients see that and they get the benefit of their whole team supporting them as well.
Is there anything that you know now that you really wish you knew before you started practicing law?
I wish somebody told me how complicated California sentencing was before I moved out here.
What do you think's the best advice that you've ever received?
I guess the best advice I have is from my mom and my dad, that you should follow a career path that lines up with your interests, because otherwise you're just going to be unhappy.
Do you think the legal system is fair?
The implied answer is no. I think the law is often set up to at least potentially operate in a very unfair way. I think, for example, getting back to California sentencing, there's a lot of ways where I think somebody could receive what's a disproportionate sentence, even if they are guilty of the crime involved. And, sometimes the wrong laws are passed that result in disproportionate results.
I'm going to shift gears a little bit, Joe. What's your family life like, and how has practicing law affected that?
Well, unfortunately, again, my wife is understanding that, I'm in a job that's very demanding, but, it's part of something I'm genuinely interested in doing, because that's kind of the path that she's followed as well, just in a different field. But I mean, again, living down the street from our main office is definitely a huge bonus. Plenty of free time to balance with my work. And when I am working, I like what I do. So family life's well. We do frequently, certainly before the pandemic, we visited Philadelphia quite frequently to, visit family and catch up. They're pretty good at our firm for, allowing us to take vacation time as long as it doesn't conflict with major court commitments. And so that's definitely a big plus.
Do you have any recreational pursuits, things that you like to do to kind of clear your head when you're not practicing?
Well, definitely there's listening to music. I like putting on a good album in my car, or, sometimes when I'm just like relaxing at home. I typically don't like to go towards legal fiction, not because I think it's inaccurate, but because I don't want to consume more law necessarily when during my free time, because that's what my work time is for. So I like to read a lot of fantasy novels. I read the first 3 books of the Dune series recently. I enjoyed that. I'll probably check that out again later. I'm really excited for the movie that's coming out. And I also just read the Shadow and Bone trilogy as well. And of course, I'm a Game of Thrones fan, so, or at least I'm a fan of the books. So that's definitely something that I like to do. And I'm looking forward to attending some of my first concerts in several months coming down the road. So that would probably be what makes up most of my free time.
What sort of things keep you up at night?
If I have a really complicated case and I feel like I'm not doing enough to really put the best foot forward, that's something that really gets at me. And, because I take great pride in my work, and I like knowing that, I'm doing everything I can for our client. I take the role of zealous advocacy very seriously. We all do. Everybody should. And when somebody comes to us to hire us their representative, I always feel for them. And so if I have a particularly complicated case where there's some relevant issue that's unresolved, I think that's something that definitely is something that adds to my stress and, keeps me up at night.
Let's say you and your wife came into some real money, a few $1 billion. What, if anything, would you do differently in your life?
Well, probably buy a couple of properties overseas. So it's, we talk about it every once in a while. It's a pipe dream. We've talked about maybe getting a property in Spain, or maybe in England or Japan. These are all complete pipe dreams, but they're places we've gone to before. So we're like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we had a place back there? And it's like, yeah, that'd be fun. So I'd like to do that. Definitely travel a lot more. I have not. My wife has been to all 7 continents. I'm missing one. I have not yet been to Australia, so I need to check that off my list. So the implication, of course, yes, that means I have been to Antarctica.
Oh, well, tell me a little bit about your travel experience, and specifically Antarctica.
Well, that was it was around our trip to Antarctica where Lisa, my wife, got the message from Tesla. So it had been a long life goal of Lisa's to plan a trip to Antarctica. So I was like, yeah, let's do it. So we flew to Argentina and then got on a boat. It was like a research vessel repurposed for our trip, and it was about a weekish long trip up and down the Antarctic Peninsula with several landfalls. It was great. It's like another planet down there.
Let's say you had a magic wand, you could wave it and change one thing in the world, legal or otherwise. What would that be?
I think that if and this is very non-specific, but if there was some way to wave that wand and just resolve all the time management problems that plague the practice of law, I think it would probably be for that. Because I feel like that really, adds to so much of the stress. I mean, you have meetings to go to, you got other cases to go to, but you're in one place and that department has so many other cases on its calendar that it has to go through. And it's it's inevitable that practitioners feel like they're spread too thin. And that really adds to stress and poor quality of life. And of course, under some circumstances, just poor representation. So if my magic wand could somehow cure that, I would probably ask it to do that.
Yeah, that aspect of the practice really is stressful. I think every single one of us goes through that when we have to be in 2 or 3 courts at the same time. There's just nothing you can do about it. And as understanding as the courts are, there's that self-pressure that I've found never goes away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tough, right? I mean, like I was saying earlier, sometimes it seems like, even when everybody in the system is doing the right thing, the reality of it is sometimes the law does not account for other structural things going on. But, when you're good at what you do and your subject matter, you just battle back against it.
Is there anything else that you want to talk about that we haven't covered?
All I can say is that, it was really scary, moving across the country to try my hand in a totally new jurisdiction, a new locality. But, I'm glad that I landed with the right people here who have been perpetually supportive of me and my goals to excel in this field. And I just think it's great. Ever since I joined this firm, things have just consistently gotten progressively better. Our office space, our staff has expanded, gotten better trained. We added Simone as another associate. It's just consistently gotten better, and it's going to, and we're already doing great, and we're going to get better and better and better as we grow, because I got to tell you, these are some of the hardest working people in the legal field that I would hope to run into, and I would stand shoulder to shoulder with any of them on any given case that we have out here.
Joe McPeak, thank you so much for joining me today on the Love Thy Lawyer podcast. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Oh, likewise. Thanks. I was glad I was able to take the time.
That's it for today's episode of Love Thy Lawyer. If you enjoyed listening, please share it with a friend and subscribe to the podcast. If you have comments or suggestions, send me an email. I promise I'll respond. Take a look at our website at lovethylawyer.com, where you can find all of our episodes, transcripts, photographs, and information. Thanks as always to my guests who share their wisdom, and to Joel Katz for music, Bryan Matheson for technical support, and Tracy Harvey. I'm Louis Goodman.
I mean, Philadelphia, my heart and soul is there. I love. But one thing that I noticed was a huge improvement moving out here was just a so much better music scene. Like I've been going to shows, well, before the pandemic at least, so much more often as a Bay Area resident than I was back in Philadelphia.